Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today, I have a few stories for you from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. Before we start, thank you to each and every one of you who has picked up your own Carmen Chameleon from my store online. The red, green, and blue ones seem to be really popular. They sold out really quickly. I just finished another batch and they are up there, up for grabs right now. So if you missed out on getting a red, green, and blue one, there are 15 more of them available now. Check them out on my website, CanadianRob.com, also linked in the description down below. Now, let's jump into our stories. This story comes to us from one of your favorites, Ancient Educator 76. Stop this crap and tell me what's going on right now. Hey y'all, if you know me, you know that I operate a drive-thru in the Wild West, living the dream in Arizona. Things are hectic here at Mendy's, but it's been admittedly a little more so and in a very different way since a certain brand of the devil's lettuce has been legalized. Like, people are straight up wandering around the valley looking like they just landed on planet Arizona, not knowing the basics of life. I mean, I'm having to explain toilets, doors, water bottles, oh, you gotta twist it brah, gnarls, and especially the drive-thru. It's like Idiocracy come to life, and we've got a crew of Luke Cunningham Wilsons and Maya Rudolphs trying to make it through our day. Last night, another one of these aliens entered our airspace, so I approach with my usual greeting, one of two possible, "Hi, welcome to Mendy's, please hold on a second and I'll be right with you." It's policy that we must greet the car within 5 seconds, preferably 3, of them setting our bell off, when they drive close enough for their window to reach the speaker. So if we're busy with the previous order or orders, we'll greet and have them hold. Well, this wasn't cutting it for this car full of Dak Shepherds. As soon as I told them to hold, they were, "What? What the F? Nah, no, you talk to the other guy, man. I swear to God, brah. Tell me what's going on right now, man. What's going on? Don't say no more words till you tell me what's going on right now, man." Wow, just friggin' wow. This was a peppering of words, fired at me Nerf style by the entire car of people. It was hard to say who said what, but I applied my malicious compliance to all of them, spray and pray style. Well sir, you're currently in the drive-thru of an Arizona Mendy's. By pulling your vehicle up to our speaker, you are entering into a social contract where I listen to what food you would like to order from our restaurant and put that into our system so our amazing chefs know what to make for you. Sometimes, I don't have time to take that order with immediacy, so I'll tell you to hold until I'm ready to enter your order. I can only enter your order when I'm standing within reaching distance of the POS, and when I'm logged in. If I've told you to hold on, in about 30 seconds or less, I will then take your order. Do you understand? Great. Now, hold on while I figure out what's going on with the previous order. Then they respond, "Oh, no effing way, all of that, and I still have to wait? You could have taken my order already. We're out of here." I try to reply as I hear them peeling out, "Sir," but it was too late. They hit the car in front of them. They were so pissed that they forgot how stupidly high they were. They literally rammed the car in front of them. They both had to pull forward, but the car in front refused to move because they didn't want these guys taking off. It shut our drive-thru down for an hour and a half. Our lobby was rockin'. The kids each, all 4, got arrested, 3 in handcuffs, 1 with his parents. It was a melee. One kid wound up getting hauled off after everything, car was towed, and the other kids wound up in tears at the end of it. Much substances were involved based on smell alone, and grape of all flavors. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Pranksterette. It says, "See, when I worked at my local Mendy's here in lovely Michigan, my customers that like to indulge in the wacky tobacco were, how do I say, very, very, very indulging of said wacky tobacco, to the point where at least once a shift, my customer would roll up to my window, roll down their window, and just a cloud of smoke would obscure my vision. Contact highs were darn near a guarantee for our drive-thru people." Another user down below called Savvy Silly Bug says, "I don't judge anyone for doing substances, especially not something silly like weed or alcohol. But come on man, don't effing drive when you're not right in the head. No sympathy for that crap. They're lucky they just hit a parked car instead of a high-speed collision. go online and let someone else deliver that crap to you. The green stuff has been legalized up here in Canada where I am for quite some time now, and I believe for the first 6 months or so, there was an adjustment period where people who didn't know how to get high, well, they just didn't know how to get high. But after a while, they realized what they can and can't do. I will definitely not condone driving while under the influence of anything though. That should never be done. And they're lucky they didn't kill somebody. They only smacked into the back of a car that was basically parked. I do want to give a special shout out to all of our fast food workers out there. You guys go through and put up with a lot of shit, and I totally respect you for it. This story comes to us from NoBuilder7010. Insurance company requires repair quotes on letterhead? My pleasure. My husband and I bought a boat in a storage lot to flip. We spent months of time and buckets of money to fix her up, and we were getting close to being done. The work included painting and rehabbing the mast, the stick that holds the sails, which was being stored in a cradle next to the boat. It was well inside our space, but it did extend beyond the boat itself a few feet, so we marked it with a neon orange safety cone. Just days after painting the mast, my husband called me from the storage lot with the news that someone had damaged it. Turns out the facility's camera caught the rat trap guy drive right into the mast, knock it to the asphalt, drive over it, stop, then back over it. Naturally, he didn't leave a note, but his truck was easily ID'd, and he fessed up when confronted. He didn't want to go through insurance, so we worked up a figure based on us buying used gear, most of it not cheap, to replace what was broken, and doing all the work ourselves for free. I think it was less than $1,000, and anyone who knows boats will know what a bargain that was. Even so, he decided to go through insurance after all. The agent who called us needed a quote from a business, not just our scribbled estimate, so I contacted our local cheap boatyard for a DIY quote. They'd just store the mast while we did all the work. That bumped the total we were seeking to about $2,500. We spent 5 months trying to get the agent to respond, and when he finally did, it was to say they couldn't accept an emailed quote. It had to be an attachment on letterhead. The rinky-dink yard only sends quotes in the body of emails because they have zero forks to give. He all but called us liars and scammers who could have had their buddy supply this fake-looking estimate. No company policy required at least 2 quotes on letterhead to move forward. I confirmed that he would not be able to process our claim without those 2 quotes. Correct. I also confirmed these yards could be anywhere in the state. Correct. I warned him the new quotes would be significantly higher. But he snidely said that was fine, as long as they were on letterhead. Cue malicious compliance and some F around and find out. Having worked in the boating industry for most of my life, I knew exactly who to call. The 2 most respected, expensive boatyards in the state. These quotes included the yards doing all the work, replacing all damaged gear with new, storage fees and transportation to and from our storage lot. Both were hundreds of miles away. Unsurprisingly, he called as soon as he got the quotes, asking if he could pretty please use the rinky-dink yard's quote. Oh, you can't do that. You might get in trouble, since it's the company's policy, right? We've got to follow all the rules, lest someone think we're scammers, right? He wasn't happy. A week later, we got a check for the original quote we scribbled down for the rat trap guy. Guess the agent decided to see if we'd just bend over after he called us liars and cheats. No way. I called our insurance, who got on the line with the other agent, and gave him what for. 2 days later, we got a second check for the remainder. I'm sure someone spit on it, but I was happy enough to deposit that $14,000. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Ryugi. It says, "Gosh darn, you really raked them across the coals and they deserved it. Kinda hope that dummy gets fired for trying to accuse you of lying when he could just as easily Google the business name, call them, and ask them to confirm the quote." Absolutely not a bad payout for OP at all, and very well played. OP did mention in another comment that they weren't obligated to actually go to the place that gave them the quote. They just got the money and could do what they wanted, and so they pocketed a whole bunch of that and still fixed it themselves. Way to go, OP. This story comes to us from Jigglybum, and I don't want to mention how long it took me to figure out that that's what that said. Is this what you wanted? For context, I worked in a retirement home as the only nurse on during any said shift, and worked graveyard shifts. Even this shift was jam-packed with duties because they didn't ever want us to be bored. A good 1/3 of these duties involved cleaning that got overlapped by housekeeping at least once a week. I'm fairly creative, and my managers knew this. My one manager asked me to do window art paintings to make the place seem more festive for a super important party they were throwing for the public. They were going out of their way to make it look nicer than usual because their bosses and the owners were going to attend, as well as local news. I agreed to do the painting for free because it sounded fun. They asked me a week before the party, so I figured I would just use my 1 hour total break time during a shift to do the painting instead of coming in on my one day off that week. The paintings were all over the glass doors and floor-to-ceiling windows, so it took some time. I spent 5 of my shifts doing them, and the night before the party, I finally finished. I painted the hour closer to the beginning of my shift to finish it on day 5. The rest of the shift was insane, with emergencies that only I could tend to because I am the only actual nurse on duty. Needless to say, a lot of the little cleaning things didn't get done, such as cleaning windows and mopping the floor. I left the manager a note of all the cleaning duties that I didn't have time for because I usually finish all my duties and like to keep them informed when I'm unable to. I come through the front doors on my last night shift and smile because the painting is exactly what I envisioned, and it's finally done. I got a lot of texts from coworkers and managers saying how much they love the paintings and how it will be perfect for pictures. In my bedroom is a note with my name on it. My manager wrote me a note saying it was unacceptable that these duties were unfinished, and I should not have wasted company time doing the painting instead of my duties. Mind you, I had told her I would only be using my break times to do the paintings when I was initially asked to do them. There were cameras pointing at the areas I was painting, so she was able to see that I never spent more than an hour per shift painting. I'm so mad at this point reading the letter. My shift finishes at 7 a.m. and the party is set to start at 11 a.m. Cue Malicious Compliance. I washed the heck out of those windows that night. Goodbye, art. I went home before that manager got there, so I didn't have to explain. My coworkers told me the other managers were all mad at her for ruining the photo op spot and understood why I cleaned it off. Still makes me smile thinking about it. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Kiara5Thaters. It says, "Wow, what a frustrating situation. It's great that your coworkers understood and had your back in the end." OP responded to this one and said, "Right. Well, I also left a photocopy of my letter out for staff to read in case they had questions about why I did it." This is exactly what we come to this subreddit for: simple malicious compliance, where OP leaves out a letter for all of the coworkers to read, and they realize just how much of a pain in the butt the boss is. Although I'm sure they already had a good idea. OP, I hope you got some pictures of your artwork before you had to take it down, but I completely understand why you did. Screw that, boss. This story comes to us from Co-Real. Car dealer tried to rip me off, ended up having to pay inflated maintenance bill themselves. This happened about 17 years ago in a major city in the very south of the Netherlands with a Renault dealership. I had a new job and we needed a second car. We bought a new Twingo, a car that went for about 12,000 euro. There were 2 stipulations in the contract when we bought the car. Number 1 was that we had to get financing through Renault, and number 2 was that 3 years maintenance was included. We financed a minor part for 3 years at 0% interest. After the first year, I took the car for its first service. I had about 12,000 kilometers on the odometer. When I dropped the car off, I was asked if there was anything that needed attention. I think I answered something like, "Do whatever you need to do." In the late afternoon when I picked up the car, 3 rather bulky men were standing behind the service desk. I remember they were really focused on me when I was presented with the bill. The bill was for about 1,000 euros, and for a 1-year-old car with just 12,000 kilometers. I immediately understood what had happened. They must have figured that they could inflate the bill with all kinds of nonsense maintenance actions since I gave them carte blanche. And to avoid any troubles, they made sure that I could be intimidated by them being with 3 people. I just very friendly asked for my car key. But you have to pay first. No, I don't. Please, may I have my car keys? Instead of enlightening them straight away, I kept going like this for a bit longer. When things started to get a bit unfriendly, I reminded the rep that I had bought the car at this dealership, including 3 years of maintenance. All 3 guys turned a few shades lighter, frantically searching for the contract, whispering, moving away to the office out of earshot. It took about 10 minutes before the rep came back out and handed me my keys. I ended up getting its 3rd service just before the 3 years had elapsed, and as soon as I got the title to the car, I traded it in for a car of a different brand. And as you would expect, the bill for the 2nd and 3rd services was less than 300 to 400 euro. Not sure if this is the right Reddit. The compliance part is that they did everything they were supposed to do and way more, and I complied as well by reminding them that they were responsible for all costs. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Dabuba. It says, "Not your typical malicious compliance, but I love it. Dealership maliciously complies with your request to do whatever they need to and don't realize they have to foot the bill for it. Brilliant." The part that gets me here is that they had 3 big guys behind the counter to intimidate OP. What is up with that? I'd have to assume that this place is on camera, and a little chat with Renault's head office might be in order in this case. OP, I know this was a long time ago and it's gone now, but hindsight's always 20/20, and if you run into a situation like this again, make sure you make that phone call to their head office and let them know what kind of scumbags are working in their dealerships. This story comes to us from The Frustrated Poet. "If you leave the ward, we will discharge you." This is a story from over a decade ago which has always stuck with me, and that I was reminded of by another post here. In 2011, my darling daddy had to have surgery to remove one of his kidneys due to a large cyst. 2 days after his surgery, while he was on the ward recovering, he began to feel unwell, but thankfully it was something he was used to that could be resolved easily: heart palpitations. Now, Dad has been having heart palpitations since the mid-90s, and while it was scary in the early days, by 2011 it was a really simple routine. Go to A&E and get an injection from the cardiac team at the hospital. Sometimes he would have a normal sinus rhythm, but would be having palpitations nonetheless, identified by the feeling in his body. The doctor on shift took an ECG and promptly informed him that he was not having a heart palpitation, he had a normal sinus rhythm. He tried to explain that he had been having palpitations for 15 years. He knows what palpitation feels like, and that all she needed to do was call the cardiac team. This was a semi-regular occurrence, about once a year, and the heart nurses all knew him by name and loved him. He's quite a character. The doctor refused to page the cardiac team, repeating that he wasn't having palpitations. For a couple of hours, Dad sat there in panic, getting more and more distressed. It was outside of visiting times, so he was alone. He told the doctor that he would make his own way to the cardiac team, and she told him, "If you leave the ward, we will consider you absconded and we will formally discharge you." Again, this was 2 days after losing a major organ. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. Dad called 999 from his hospital bed. When they asked for his address, he said, "That's an interesting question. Normally it's this, but right now I'm on Ward X at this hospital." Shocked, the call handler asked what had happened, and Dad relayed the whole thing to them. The call handler escalated the call to a manager who asked to speak to Dad's doctor and gave her a massive dressing down. Her face grayed as she realized the gravity of what was happening. She immediately arranged for a porter to take him to A&E, the UK emergency room, to be assisted by the cardiac team. And what do you know? He was, in fact, having palpitations, and had been for several hours. A quick injection later, his heart was back to normal, and we were all left stunned by the whole thing. I was in my 20s at the time, and Dad was my superhero. And seeing him crying in a hospital bed, looking so scared and small, will never leave me. I will never forget what that doctor did, and I'll never forgive her. She never even apologized to him or to us. Dad could probably have taken the hospital, the doctor, and the trust to court, but that's just not his bag, and he just let it go like water off a duck's back. 12 years later, and he's healthy and happy, but I honestly thought I might lose him because of an arrogant doctor and her stubbornness. Calling the emergency number right from the hospital bed is absolutely awesome. That gets people involved when OP wasn't able to get out of the room and find those other people themselves. I don't know if that doctor pissed off the cardiac team in the past, but there's gotta be some kind of history there or a reason why they didn't want to send OP to them.